everybody. We got another episode of Jimi Wolf Talks, or JW Talks, doing a bit of a rebranding. And today we are going to do our 5 favorite U2 records. So our top 5. We're going to try to rank them. It's tricky. For me, it's almost like these are my top tier 5 U2 records, but I struggled to rank them, but I did my best. I'm sure Jeff knows what his ranking is. So
very difficult as well, Jimmy.
Yep. So I'm just gonna
this is a good back catalog we're dealing with.
It is. Yeah, it is. And there's 15 records or 16? I guess if we're including
15 or 16.
So it's quite a bit.
It's a breadth of material to wade through.
Yep. Now the one positive thing,
but I believe we're up for the challenge.
Yep. The one positive thing about doing the top 5 is that we're gonna like all 5 of these records, so there's not gonna be a lot of shit talk of the bad records. Although that can be fun too.
True.
But this is gonna be a very positive episode. It's gonna be all positive U2 comments, and
also pretty tough to shit talk any U2 records. Really, I mean,
for sure.
We're talking about a tight band here.
It's a great band. My only criticism of the albums that I didn't pick, I find a lot of them are a little too safe for me. It feels like U2 is this giant kind of corporate entity that doesn't want to rock its own boat. You know, it wants to stay kind of safe. That's my criticism of the later stuff.
They do like to sail smooth seas.
Yes.
U2 occasionally.
Yeah. Lately, yeah. Or yeah, last 20 years probably. Yeah. I'm giving a little bit of my ranking away here, but okay. So just to start real quick, what made this tough for me is that I see U2 as in four periods where their styles are quite different. So the first period, it's sort of that post-punk kind of new wave thing that they were doing in the early 80s. And then in the mid to late 80s, they became more of a classic rock band or classic pop rock band. And then the 90s, they became, more of an avant-garde electronic kind of pop band. And then their fourth phase, I would say, is their safe sailing phase. That's the, kind of like, we've made it, let's just coast. And not to shit on the songs in that latter period. Like, there's some really good songs in that period. But yeah, I find that they stopped innovating after the 90s, in my opinion. Maybe 1 or 2 tracks were kind of innovative on some of those albums, but like the style was pretty much set. We're gonna sound like U2, like a safe U2 sound for the rest of our career, and fair enough. Maybe that's what you have to do when you're as big as U2. There's not a lot of bands that are that big, so they're rewriting the rule book as they go along, but.
When you reach the status of rock juggernauts, what's there left to do?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, why don't you start? Number 5.
Okay. I'm going to start it off a bit, perhaps a bit controversial.
Fair enough.
Pop. Number 5.
Nice.
Definitely not an album that many people liked at all. I don't think many people even liked it when it came out, even though it was a relatively big seller, I think.
Yep. It's a good album.
I ranked it number 5 because I think it is innovative, although it does contain the worst U2 song ever, which is Miami. It is absolutely dreadful. Dare I say unlistenable.
Okay.
But it's also really good. I mean, Discotheque, Do You Feel Loved? It starts off real strong. Last Night on Earth, really good. Their manager describes this album as too many cooks in the kitchen. Okay. There's, I don't know, they use 8 different producers all over the board on this one. There's a cohesion in it because it's kind of electronic in nature, but the songs are very different from each other. So I kind of, I personally really like that, and I remember really liking it when it, like at that time, I had this album when it came out, and I really liked it just because it was so different. And I like that period of their career when they were pushing the envelope and making kind of dance music. However, I would say that I'm in the minority there. I don't think anyone else would put this in their top five. And if we're talking like personal favorites, this would rank even a little higher for me. But
yeah,
in terms of actual quality, I'm going to say five, just because, you know, Miami takes it down a notch for sure. The song is absolutely garbage.
yeah.
But, you know, if you wear the velvet dress, kind of a little bit ambient, a little, you know, kind of dark. Wake Up Dead Man, also very good to close out the album. 12 songs long too, which is good. You know, you get it definitely is a real album. The songs are long too, which I like. But anyways, that's all I'm going to say about that one.
Okay.
A personal favorite of mine, but number five is where it has to sit. It can't really go much higher than that, because you know, there's some other pretty heavyweight albums in their discography that this is going up against. Number four, Boy. Great record. The start of their career, Steve Lillywhite did a good job on the production. I think he took a very raw band and kind of streamlined them into something that was palatable for the masses. I think Boy did well. I don't know how well, but it was a success enough that that they got to make another record for sure. So, and it had "I Will Follow," definitely one of their all-time greatest hits. And for a band to come out of the box with a track like that, pretty rare. Something that is a lot of, I find sometimes artists do that. They come out with a hit first, but it doesn't really stack up against their greatest hits later on, especially when you're 40 something years deep like U2. Yeah. However, "I Will Follow" really holds up still. I like the kind of, it does sound dated, but to me that's part of the allure of the song. It's part of it sounds like an old friend to me. And but I like the record as a whole, to be honest. And Cat Dub, Gaelic title. Out of Control. I had a bit of a problem with this album for a long time because I thought it sounded very sparse and dated, and with the exception of "I Will Follow," but I have got into it more the older I get, and there's something special about that kind of sparse production. And again, these were the days when, this is 1980, you know, recording studios cost an absolute fortune. You know, I imagine they had a short period of time, you know, to record this thing. They got their shit together. They cranked out an album, and it worked. It wasn't like the later days when they had, you know, you can rent a castle to record your album, and, you know, which is what happened in, you know, Unforgettable Fire days. Like, they had all the money in the world behind them at that time, so they had a lot more freedom. It says something about them as a band that on the get-go, there was enough there that they pulled together a great album on their debut release. It still holds up to this day, and there's something I find very quaint about that. It sounds to me very 1980, but that's something I really like about it, and I go back and listen to that one quite frequently. So that's number four.
Hey Jeff, stop there. Let's do 5-4, and then I'll do 5-4, then 3-2, 3
Deal.
and 1-1. Yeah, just keep it suspenseful, okay? Okay, so I'll throw it in. Pop was my honorable mention. It kind of came in and out of the list like several times, but it didn't make it's number 6 for me. But Okay, so my 5 is a little controversial too. But for
You got Zeropa in there somewhere, don't you?
oh yeah, yeah, I do. Uh, that's controversial too. So this is controversial for opposite reasons. That this is probably most people's number 1 or number 2. But for me, I've always struggled with this album, and it's been a tough go. And it's Achtung Baby is my number 5. So I think.
Whoa, Jimmy!
Yeah,
mind blowing.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna kind of give my reason for it not being number 2 or number 1. I when this album came out, you know, I was fairly young, like 9 or 10, and I was really into Metallica and metal at this time. So my first reaction was, this isn't heavy. Like, this just isn't, this doesn't excite me. And that was my first reaction. I think it was, I saw Fly. It was the first video that I saw on Much Music. And I remember that riff was really cool. I was like, okay, cool. And I thought Bono looked really neat with his, like, you know, bug eye sunglasses, you know. That looked cool. But I felt like the song didn't really take off like I wanted, like a metal song to get heavy. It kind of just was a cool little floating kind of U2 thing, and I didn't like it back then. And the other issue was that everybody played this record nonstop. It was everywhere. Like, it was relentlessly played on the radio, and like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've all heard One. I mean, I was listening to Metallica's One, right? That was the one that I liked, right? I didn't want to hear U2's One, and it was just such a relentless play of these songs. Yeah, even better than The Real Thing, just mysterious ways. Like, I mean, awesome guitar riff that starts the song. It's so cool. But man, like, I don't need to hear that again. I've heard it way too many times. So the overplayed nature of this album is kind of what brings it down for me. You know, and the production. I just feel like there's always something missing in the middle. But that's U2's thing. But for some reason, it bugs me on this album. It's like floaty guitars and then the bass, but then there's nothing really in the middle, and it always bugged me. But I will say though, I think I listened to this album 4 times last week. I mean, it's got some of their greatest moments, obviously, right? I mean, Love Is Blindness, that's probably my favorite U2 song. Acrobat, awesome. You know, Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World, like, so simple, but just so impactful and like memorable, and yeah, mysterious. Like, and the Edge's guitar is just awesome on this album. And yeah, it was a huge success. You know, if the Joshua Tree put them on the map, this album glued them on the map, you know. So, and it also gave them a space in the 90s, and I think in a huge way it influenced the 90s as well. It influenced the alternative sort of anything goes that's cool and different with the 90s, and it blew the critics away. So yeah, I mean, it's a great record. I've always struggled with it, but I can see its genius. But yeah, I have to be honest. I have to, you know, I have to give my subjective take on it as well. So for that reason, it's not high on my list, but it's you know, it had to be on the list. Let's just say that. I mean, you know, I was even thinking not having this album on the list, but I had to make a sober choice there. I mean, it has to be on the list somewhere. Okay. Okay. So my number 4, I'm going to go with Zooropa, which is also kind of weird to put Zooropa above this album, but Zooropa really resonated with me when Zooropa came out. I got it right away. I loved it. I understood it. I understood it completely. I love the dark nature of the whole thing. Like, it's just this kind of weird, almost depressing record. But yeah, just like the opener of Zooropa. I mean, I love that eerie like synth that kind of brings it in, that ambient synth, and then the Edge's guitar that comes in. Oh, I love that. I love
the German.
I mean, what is Zooropa? Like, do you know what that is?
Zeropa, I believe Zooropa was a train station in Berlin. So I think uh, when they recorded Achtung Baby, they stayed in. They took the last flight out of England before and landed in Berlin before the Berlin Wall uh, fell, and Zooropa was the last station on the line, I think, between East and West Berlin or something like that. It was an important station.
Okay.
And I don't know, they liked the. There's a lot of symbolism in those two albums from just that place where they recorded a lot of those early tracks, and they did go back to Ireland and finish the rest of the record. But when they were making Achtung Baby, they recorded a lot of it in Hans Studios in Berlin, and they were by this time they didn't really like the perception that people had of them of being kind of like a dour rock band that were kind of so earnest. There was a bit of a backlash, I think, in the late 80s about them being a little too reluctant of their success. And by this time, I think they started to, Bono says they wanted to just enjoy themselves. And they were like, well, we are super famous and mega rich. Why don't we just live it up a bit? So they did. They started going out a lot. And when they were recording Achtung Baby, they were living life as opposed to the other albums. I think what they did is they checked into a studio and worked hard on it. And this they kind of recorded at their leisure. They'd work during the day, they'd go out at night, then in the morning they'd go back in the studio, and then they'd go out at night. And so they were living more life. And Zooropa as an album was a lot of stuff and ideas that they worked on during Achtung Baby, but also Edge was getting divorced, and during the Zoo TV tour, he had a mobile studio that followed them around, and Edge went to work, and it's a lot of that album is the Edge because he was getting divorced, and he really didn't want to go out, and he just kind of devoted himself to work and putting. It was almost like he was trying to keep busy, so he's not thinking about the divorce, but a lot of these unfinished ideas from Achtung Baby bled into Zooropa as well, and that's why it still has a kind of a dancey type vibe, but it's a lot more Edge.
Cool.
Anyways, that's a long-winded explanation of what Zooropa is.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, love Babyface. Numb is cool. That's the Edge's tune. Lemon's great. Stay is also one of my favorite U2 songs. Absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I like the production of this album much better than Achtung Baby. I think this production is more cutting edge. I think it has aged better. Like Daddy's Gonna Pay for Your Crash Car. Like I love that weird clangy drum sound at the beginning, and then it goes into that really weird kind of distorted loop thing. Like that is so cool. Like that still gives me goosebumps like when I hear that 30 years later. And yeah, I mean the album gets a little slow near the end there. But yeah, I gotta say I love the Johnny Cash tune. It's such an ironic song to have on a U2 album, and yeah, I mean it's kind of it's silly, but I love it. I really enjoy it. And yeah,
I would just have to say, Jimmy, I feel like that is their most self-indulgent moment ever to write a song like that. And it'd be one thing to put it on a B-side or something, but to put it on the closer of your album, I thought that's still something that doesn't sit well with me. But anyway,
yeah,
we can agree to disagree.
Sure, maybe it's one of those ironic U2 things that they do. Like it's yeah. I mean, sure, yeah, it's pretty self-indulgent for sure. Yeah, for sure. But I think U2 is self-indulgent. I think they, they're like probably the biggest pop alternative band ever in the world, right? So yeah, it makes sense that they, but I like see that like I like that they did something wild because they wouldn't do that now, right? Like
No.
in the '90s, I like that they would do really weird things like that. So yeah, but yeah, sure. I mean, it's obviously most people don't like that, and I totally get it. But okay, cool. So why don't you do 3 and 2?
So I mean, I guess seeing as we're talking about the best U2 albums again, I don't think that what any of my selections are going to shock anybody. They're fairly they're pretty easy to guess. You know, for me, number 3 would be War for sure. It had their first massive hit, Sunday Bloody Sunday. To be honest, it's the first song that I remember as a child. I remember that. I remember that being on the radio, and I was too young to remember "I Will Follow." And later on, as a child, I remember that being played on the radio. But Sunday Bloody Sunday, I remember it when it was out. I remember that when it was current. Um, sorry. Um, and it was their first big success. It was their first taste of real stardom. It was also, again, Steve Lillywhite at the helm. I think it was a big, excuse me, I think it was a really big seller for them. Again, it sounds very 80s, but there's something about, they really started to come into their own as a band. A lot of the songs are dealing with social issues of the day. You know, Sunday Bloody Sunday is about, Bloody Sunday and the struggles in Ireland, which again was something that I had no idea about. I was too young to understand that there were problems in the world that were, you know, I had no idea that there was anything like that going on in Ireland at the time. Or I was too young to understand geopolitics, pretty much. And that was probably my first introduction to politics as a young child. That really resonated with me. Still one of their strongest songs to this day. Again, if you're going to say "I Will Follow" is memorable, still stacked up against the greatest hits, I mean, I don't think you could ever even think of having a YouTube concert without Sunday Bloody Sunday. Like it is of that era. It is surely one of their greatest hits, and still sits nicely amongst all their other, you know, greatest hits. Another personal favorite is New Year's Day for me, and I know those were the two big singles. I also really like Two Hearts Beat as one. But New Year's Day, there's something about that song, and I can't really put my finger on it. Maybe it's just the simple piano lick with the mild reverb on it. You know, it's. I think when bands make songs that are specific about events, or like perhaps when bands make Christmas songs or this and that, they can be a bit trite. But New Year's Day is something that has just always resonated with me. And I remember even when that came out, wondering why they made a song called New Year's Day about a holiday that really doesn't make, as a child, New Year's Day is not a big deal at all. It's just another fucking day, right? It's not like when you're a teenager, I guess it tends to be more of a big deal. You're going to go out and party with your friends and stuff. It's more of a big event. But as a child, I just didn't understand why you would make a song like that. And now that I'm older, to be honest, I still don't know what they're getting at. It's not a happy song, and they're definitely trying to get their point across. There's, you know, allusions to greed and things like that, and things that are wrong with the world. It's definitely has social commentary in it, and I can grasp that now as an adult. But there's something abstract about it that I still like to this day. I guess I can't put my finger on what they're talking about, but again, it doesn't make any difference. I don't need to know, as long as it's special for me. What does it matter that they were talking about? Also, Seconds 40. I mean, there's a lot of really good songs on War. And it was, if Boy was maybe, I personally like every song on Boy, but I guess it's kind of like you said with Zeroba. In the middle, it can get a little wishy washy. War was their first album that was good. And mind you, it was only 10 songs, but it was good front to back. I don't find there to be any duds on War whatsoever. Especially what I find something that really sticks out about that album too is the cover. Is that boy with that looks like Larry Mullen Jr., like he could be his son, but like I will never forget that album cover. Like I remember seeing it at the record store and I wanted to buy it and it's such a simple cover. I mean, it's a picture of a boy with kind of a strange look on his face. You don't know whether he's angry or or sad or maybe but anyways, it is a striking picture and one that has always resonated with me and stuck in my head. I can remember being a very young boy when my aunt was going out to buy tapes and being in the record store and seeing that and associating that with U2 and knowing that Sunday Bloody Sunday was a U2 song, and those three things I liked all separately, and that was what clued in that picture was from that band who sings that song. That was one of my first connections with associating a band or music that I liked that was from an artist. Because when in '83, I would have been 5. So, and probably at that young age, it probably had to be like 84, 85 when I put this all together. But that was the first time that I could hear something, besides Michael Jackson, where I could hear it and be like, that song and that band and that album, that's something I want to learn more about, for sure. So that was a kind of a long-winded number 3 there. Should I do number 2 and then we'll do number 1's last?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, number 2 has to be the Joshua Tree. Now, I liked the Joshua Tree when it came out. Again, those songs were so big. I love the production. It definitely sounds like they put a lot of work into this album, a lot of heart and soul, a lot of very strong songwriting and beautiful lyrics and great imagery. No duds on this one either. But I don't think War had duds. But Joshua Tree was stronger somehow. And you're the producer, so I can't really comment on the actual the technical nature of the production. That's something I don't really know or understand. But to the layman's ears, it sounds to me like they might have worked on War for a month and that they worked on the Joshua Tree for 6 months. It just sounds fuller and more, and to me, it's almost like they had all the time in the world to make it perfect, and they did. It came out. It's an album I will never ever get tired of. I will always go back to it. It has arguably all their greatest hits on it, Where the Streets Have No Name, With or Without You, Some Found What I'm Looking For, and in terms of live, Bullet the Blue Sky, they never do a show without playing that one. And talk about a departure for them. If you're going to say that they're really going, definitely running headfirst into that Americana sound, where they're paying homage, to the rock and roll music that they loved, and this is their take on it. I mean, Bullet the Blue Sky is a 180, and it's track 4. It is. I can remember hearing that as a child and being blown away. I had no idea. It was so different from everything else on the album. It's such a sharp turn, but man, does it ever work! It is dark, and the imagery is almost a little frightening. And I like, to be honest, talk about weird, but I like the little Bono monologue in the middle of it. Like, it's not quite a rap, but he just, the song is so fucking weird. It just works on every level. And I think it's only band that has that much confidence could really, and is so talented, could pull something like that off. Something that is just so different from everything that they've done before. But uh, it just works so well. It's such a memorable moment on that album for me. Towards the end of the album, it's a little. Those are the songs that are a little bit lesser known. But I mean, In God's Country, absolutely beautiful. Mothers of the Disappeared. Grant, the whole album is filled with social commentary as well. Mothers of the Disappeared is about the disappearing. I believe it was El Salvador, about how the secret police were just capturing people and people that were political dissidents. Sorry, and they would be outspoken about the government, and then they were kidnapped and never found again, and no one ever heard from them again. And that's only something I found out about later in life. Again, Mothers of the Disappeared, I had no idea what they were talking about when I was younger. But Trip Through Your Wires, Red Hill Mining Town. Talking about my brothers there, my blue collar brothers working it in the mines there. I mean, that's something I identify with now as an adult. That I just kind of liked it when I was younger. That the song has a nice melody, but you two understand their fan base. I mean, they may be rich and famous, but they don't forget their brothers back home that are working hard in shitty jobs, that making enough money to feed the kids and maybe buy them some decent Christmas presents. They know their fans, and I don't know, just absolutely perfect. A 100% flawless album from front to back. And surprising that it's number 2 for me, but pretty obvious what number 1 is. But now I will pass the microphone over to you, sir, for your 3 and 4, for your 3 and 2.
Okay. Okay, so my 3, I'm gonna go with their debut, Boy. Yeah, I love U2 in this period because for me, like, the album sounds like a band. It's like a band playing in their rehearsal space. Like, the drums, I think the drums are recorded in a stairwell, right? So it has that nice echoey, roomy sound to it. Just so much power. The Edge is just killing it here. I love Bono's aggression. I mean, it's probably because they're young too, right? They're full of piss and vinegar, right? But there's also just this fearlessness that they have. Like, they're not trying to be a huge band. They just love music, and this is just what their passion is. And I miss that on so many of the new U2 albums, but it's really here. The album is themed around childhood. That's why it's called Boy. So a lot of the songs have that sort of just songs about being young. And I love Into the Heart. I love Out of Control. I mean, I love all of them, right? I mean, I Will Follow. I mean, yeah, I've heard that a lot. I don't need to hear that again, but it's still great. Just a really well produced record. And Steve Lillywhite, you mentioned him. He's perfect for this band. He captured exactly what they were. It sounds so good. So that kind of leads me to my number 3. I'm going to go with number 2. I'm going to go with War for my number 2. War is just a slight step up from Boy. It's a little more refined, but it still has all the good elements that were on Boy. It still has that huge live band sound, but now they have hits, right? So it's kind of like, this is almost like the perfect, this. I mean, it's not my number 1, but it could theoretically on paper be my number 1, just because it's the perfect middle ground of them being young and huge and just hungry and just being just the best of their band abilities, but then them also being really good songwriters meeting at the same time. So this is kind of like that sort of magical moment that I feel is happening on this record. And yeah, I agree with you. Like I think this is probably their best album cover. Because for me, like his stare is just striking. Like I remember, going to the record store and flipping through the U2 section, right? This album would always just pop out like, whoa, wow. Like, it's like that stare, right?
The kid looks a little angry,
Well, yeah.
That's what I've always found out about it.
So this is what I love about the symbolism. It's like, you could look at this kid like he's a future warrior. So he's like, he's ready to fight in a war. He's got that sort of like Lord of the Flies look, right? But then he could also be angry that he is stuck in a war. It's like, why are you fighting? I'm just an innocent kid, and I'm a helpless.
Maybe he's a victim of war.
Yeah, totally. So he's angry that he's a victim of war. And just the striking contrast of the black and white photo with the red war down the side, like that's such a great contrast too, right? So yeah, brilliant idea. I mean, the band, like I don't know if that's a family like member of the band, but they would do similar things with the later record.
It's one of their buddies' kids.
Is it? Okay.
Yes.
Like they did that on like Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. They used their family members on the record cover, but yeah, I don't know. I think this is, and yeah, this was a smash hit. It sold well over 10 million albums. I think maybe 12 or 13 million albums. I mean, it was a huge hit for them. So yeah, they were. I mean, right out of the gate, they were successful, right? I mean, Boy was platinum too, right? So like they were they were huge sellers right from the beginning. I also think too, like they managed to capture that sort of post-punk new wave thing, but they packaged it in a digestible package for the average person, right? It's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like it's like Joy Division. I mean, they are brilliant, but sometimes it's hard to listen to, right? Whereas U2 kind of took that attitude and made it digestible, like it's Bono's more melodic. The band just plays better, but they have that dark energy of that genre that I love.
Bono also has a much better singing voice than Ian Curtis.
Well, sure.
His vocals soar. He has power. No, and I personally don't like Joy Division. Nothing against them, but you're right. I definitely agree with that. They have. You can tell that you too love Joy Division.
Yeah.
And that they were influenced by them, but their thing is they did take teenage angst and they packaged that, you're right, post-punk attitude in a more palatable manner for the charts.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So what's numero uno?
Big shocker.
All right.
Acton Baby all the way. Pretty tough to say that this one, not the Joshua Tree, is number one. But I'm going to go with Acton Baby just because it's so off the wall. Like, people were expecting another. They just came so different. Like, I was at an age when that came out, I was, I think, 13. So I had grown up with U2 already. And then talk about like a huge, they changed everything about their image changed. The way their music videos were way different. The way they dressed and the music itself. Like, they did a complete 180. The tour was massive and had all these screens and was like everything. It's almost like they were a new band. But it really, really shines in the music. And I find this album to be absolutely flawless. And the problem is the Joshua Tree is flawless too. But this to me is just so fresh. And like, it's groovy. Like, U2 makes mood music for sure. But to me, there's just a sexiness about some of the songs on this album. Like, even better than The Real Thing has like a pulsating dance floor rocking backbeat to it, and in mysterious ways is kind of funky. And I know you said you really didn't dig The Fly, but like that to me that is a hard ass Edge riff. And I remember the first time I heard that, I knew instantly it was the Edge, and I was like, "Wow, you two are coming hard." And the chorus gets a little with the falsetto and all that. I can kind of see maybe where you're coming from, where it doesn't deliver with the hardness that guitar lick insinuates from the get-go. But to me, the album just kind of flows up and down. It starts off weird with Zoo Station and gets into groovy with Even Better Than the Real Thing, and deep, dark, introspective with One, and then back up with Until the End of the World. And it really is a roller coaster ride. And I love the order of the tracks. This album would be lesser with any single track that they chose to keep off there. The album would be lesser. It is absolutely perfect the way they did it, with all 12 tracks in that order, and the artwork too. Anton Corbijn took so many good pictures, they couldn't even decide on an album cover. So they said, "Fuck it, let's just make a collage, put them all on there," and that's how they got that album cover, because they were all so fond of so many of the pictures. It seems to me they were just firing on all cylinders at this point. The band, although it was a tough album to make for them, they pulled it all together and came up with a masterpiece, and they knew it. And they knew that this was something special. They knew that also knew their fans would come with them for this one. I think maybe when Pop came out, they thought our fans are for sure going to follow us with this one, but they didn't. It was a bit of a misstep. But with this one, they knew that they had, they for sure had all 6 bullets, in each of the 6 shooters ready to shoot off. Absolutely stunning album. You don't really like the fact that there's not a lot of mids going on here, but I love the real high and the deep lows. I love the production on this album. I think it sounded, I'm hesitant to use the word futuristic, because again, I'm no producer and you are, but I just remember when that came out, it sounded so fresh. It sounded like nothing else, and you couldn't even believe it was U2. But it was so exciting, and I do agree with you. It has been played a million times, but to me, I will always come back to that one. And I still listen to that one very frequently, and front to back too. There's no, I guess I do have my cherry picked favorite songs, but it's just a stunner front to back. And I even love some of the lesser known songs, like Trying to Throw Your Arms Around the World, which is just kind of an easy breezy kind of tune. There's not a lot going there, but it's a bit of a lull in a very intense record. And then Acrobat and Love Is Blindness are after, which are equally, heavy tracks. So Actung Baby, number 1, all the way, 100%. Although it was a close, very close with the Joshua Tree, I gotta say, because those two are so tight. And because you had an honorable mention, I gotta throw it in now. Rattle and Hum. Again, not a popular choice. I don't think the critics definitely hated this. I think by the time Rattle and Hum came out, people were tired of U2 as well. Like maybe their North American fans thought that they were overdoing it a little much. And I remember that reading how this album was not well received. The critics kind of were very tough on it. They put out a movie that really didn't do well. But with a little bit of hindsight, there are 9. So it's kind of like some Rattle and Hum is some new tracks with some live versions, couple covers. But it is 9 new songs. 9. And all of them are stellar. So again, it's not quite an album, but it's still in that time period of where they were just killing it. the songs were just, they were cranking them out, and even the singles from this album had B-sides. There were 4 singles, and they all had B-sides, and all those B-sides were good too. Like, they just couldn't lose in this time period. And I think with a little bit of hindsight, this album's better now than it was when it came out. But I mean, All I Want Is You, Desire for sure, Angel of Harlem, When Love Comes to Town with BB King. I mean, these are still songs that are beloved by the fans, albeit not as much as, the Joshua Tree hits or the ones from Acting Baby. But still, that album occupies a definite space in there. To me, it doesn't hit the top 5, but honorable mention. Jimmy, I have a feeling I know what your number 1 is.
All right. So my number 1 is
it's October, isn't it? Tell me, is it October?
No. Close. So I'm gonna go with Songs of Innocence. I feel like no, sorry. I'm just kidding. No, I'm gonna go with Joshua Tree, of course. Yeah, it's one of those things where the first time I heard it, I got it right away. Didn't take any guesswork. I didn't have to re-listen to it. I loved it the first time I heard it. This album just kind of it just sums up what the U2 sound, right? The delayed guitar, like the edge with his delayed guitar, melodies, and then the four note bass, bass line, that's U2, right? And they do it here perfectly. It influenced so many bands. It's the band's bestseller, 26 million or something insane. It's a great production team, like Daniel Lanois and Brian Eno. They worked on I sometimes call it the Forgettable Fire. I mean, not a bad record, but it does get forgotten between War and this, because for me, War and this album are their 2 best in my opinion. That's U2's peak. But yeah, I do agree that Achtung Baby was a fantastic comeback or comeback. I don't even know if it's a comeback, but a reinvention. I totally agree with that. But yeah, I think War and Joshua Tree, these, so good. Yeah, side 1 definitely gets more love than side 2 on this record. But side 2 is.
I concur, Jimmy.
Yeah, but side 2 is fantastic. And yeah, it's great that U2 is sort of in this. I like it because it's almost their own genre, right? I mean, I can't really. I find it hard to label this record. What is it? It's just U2. It's U2's Joshua Tree. It sounds like itself. But I can't really compare it to anything else. It's got their sort of post-punk tricks that they do with the guitar and the bass and all that stuff, and the drums. But then they do this whole different sort of earthy, maybe it's earthy new wave or earthy alternative music. I don't know what you call it, but it definitely redefines itself. And yeah, it's classic. There's nothing out of place. It's powerful, but yet it's very soothing and relaxing. It's a perfect record. Yeah, I mean, I really can't add anything more to what's already been said to this legendary album. But yeah, I think between the 2 of us, we there's a few weird. I threw in a few weird ones there. Maybe pop is weird, but yeah, I think between the 2 of us, we listed the most critically acclaimed U2 records between our lists.
I definitely think we nailed it, Jimmy.
Yep. Okay.
This by far was the definitive U2 album rating right here, you and me.
Yep, there it is.
Enemy, are you listening?
Well, okay. I mean, I have yet to see. I did a bunch of research online. I have yet to see a list where I think I only saw one list that didn't have either, Achtung Baby or Joshua Tree in first place, and it was they had all that You Can't Leave Behind as number one on one of the lists that I saw. But that was like one of 10 lists. So I think the U2 catalog is pretty universally accepted to be War, Achtung Baby, and Joshua Tree. Those always show up. And it was I was the one that I was surprised with. The one sleeper was definitely Boy, because I saw that one in a lot of lists as well, and I didn't think it would make my top 5 either. But like, I listened to it at least 3 or 4 times this week, and man, it's so good. Definitely
I like to keep coming back to that one just because it's where they got their start, and it's like you said, they're so raw,
Yep.
and hungry, and you can hear the energy in all they're playing. It's like I don't really think they're struggling to make hits or they're striving to make hits, but they're just playing their hearts out because they got their shot, and you can hear it all over that record. They sound like a band that is determined
now
to be heard.
Now, do you feel that U2 has a weird curve where they do like a really good record followed by a great record followed by a good to okay album, like Boy, and then October was kind of down, and then War was up, and then maybe,
you know what, the reason why October was shitty is because they had studio time booked, and Bono lost his book of like lyrics that he was and song ideas. So October, they kind of had to wing it a little bit, and obviously, like, they worked on stuff in sound checks because all they were doing a lot of, but like the studio time was booked, so they're like, we don't care whether you lost your inspiration, go in and make us a record. So they did. They had to go in, and Steve Lillywhite did a good job, and there were some good ideas, like Gloria was kind of good, and Fire, I guess, was okay, but like they just weren't as prepared. Mm-hmm. Whereas War, they're like, they were ready.
Yeah.
And they I think the songs were ready beforehand, and it's just they came in and they gave the songs all that they could. Yeah. Whereas I think after War, then they probably still had ideas for songs, but they would go into the studio and they would experiment, and they might write new songs, and different things might come up. But War was the end of the period where, like, they had all the ideas ready beforehand, and then the studio's booked, they go in and record it. And I don't know whether they worked on any other material, or like they did a lot of experimentation. The experimentation stuff came in the Unforgettable Fire and Joshua Tree Times and later. But because still in those early days, I think the studio time was so expensive, and even though they had made money, they hadn't made a lot of money or sold. Like I think a lot of the proceeds that Boy, and I think October sold reasonably well too, but those profits got reinvested back into the band. So it's not a huge cash surplus that they're working with right now. So anyway, War was it really was the end of an era. Yeah. For me, but still fantastic record, and definitely a great period for them. It's all about the 80s, Jimmy, really.
So maybe what I'll do is I'll stick a ranking of all the records. I didn't add them up here, but like maybe the honorable mention gets a 0.5. Number 5 gets a 1. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So your number 1 gets a 5 point. We can see what. I think that I just in my head, I think it's the Joshua Tree that probably won this one. But
well, yeah, because it was your number 1 and it was my number 2, so for sure it won.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's a fair assessment, right?
Yeah.
That's it's certainly. I would never argue with anyone who likes the Joshua Tree more than Achtung Baby. Like,
yeah,
it would be.
Okay, a couple points. I feel like I need to kind of redeem myself with Achtung Baby. So, The Fly has a fantastic guitar solo that I forgot about. definitely want to give a shout out to The Edge for that solo. Also, I remember, I'm not sure if I told you the story, but I was driving home from work, and I think I was listening to CBC or some popular radio station, and they this band came on and did a cover of One. And I forget who the band was, but it was so beautiful. I actually had to pull a car over and just focus on the song. And that kind of reminds me like how great that song is. I really don't like the U2 version anymore because it's been overplayed, but like when I heard somebody else do it, it was like, wow, that's awesome. Like that's a powerful tune. So yeah, just thought I'd throw some love for Octung Baby there.
So it's definitely a thing with this group where definitely they've been, their music is very well known and they still play it a lot to this day. But I'm a little, I'm predisposed because I'm a huge fan. So I don't ever get tired of, I don't ever get tired of their music. I can definitely see how some people do, because they're everywhere. I mean, Christ, they play their music in Walmart. So, but to me, that's not an issue for me at all. And I feel like I can judge them quite accurately based on just the strength of the music. And to be honest, I will never ever tire of any of their great music. I'll never get tired of listening to Act On Baby, never get tired of the Joshua Tree, never get tired of War Boy. I'll never get tired of those albums. They've made some. I actually honestly feel that they are the greatest band of our generation, me and you. People that are, they were born in the late 70s, very early 80s. We grew up with that band in every incarnation of theirs. And we were impressionable at times when they were changing, and we were grown-ups when, and they put out albums right through our entire lives. And I don't think that there's another band like that besides, I guess, if you wanted to argue, if you were more into, you're into Metallica, I mean, 83 was their first record, and that's pretty damn close. And they have evolved and kept moving on right through the years, never broken up, never, that's another band that's kept it going right through our entire lives. But definitely U2 is more of an accessible band than Metallica. Metallica's heavy, and nothing against heavy music, but U2 is more palatable for the masses strictly because it's not as heavy. I mean, my dad my dad let me listen to U2 stuff in the car when I was younger, but my dad would never, ever even think about listening to Metallica or let me ever listen to that in the car when I was younger. So it was noise. He would classify that as noise, which, I definitely like Metallica, but I love U2. And I think they're the best band of our generation, period.
Now,
bold statement, Jeff. I know.
Is there a dishonorable mention that you'd like to say about U2? Like their worst record? We don't have to. I don't know. I thought it'd be fun.
Yeah, I mean, okay. If you're gonna put me on the spot, I would say October is a little weak. It could have gone really bad for them with that one. And I don't think it's dishonorable in the fact that it's not good. Like, it's okay. It's decent. I own it. I don't love it, but I do like it. That could have gone south for them, though. I mean, it was anticlimactic compared to how good Boy was. So you're going to come out with a track like that, an album like that. It was a misstep for them. And just lucky enough, there was enough good shit on that album that it kept, and they were good enough live because they kept touring and fighting for their fans that they were allowed to make War. So they were lucky because they could have got shut down right there and then because that album didn't do as well as Boy. but they thankfully people believed in them. The record label believed in them, and they were passionate that their fans believed in them. So they, but that could have, like I said, that could have gone really bad for them. And there's probably instances in the '80s where other groups had a similar trajectory, where you have the big one, your first album successful based on that one hit, and then album number 2 tanks, and there you go. There's your record career. It's done. So,
yeah. Okay. Sounds good, Jeff. Yeah, I don't really have any specific albums. For me, I like parts of All That You Can't Leave Behind. I think the hits on that album are great. How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb, I think, is actually a little better. I like that record. But beyond that, it gets a little kind of just vague and cloudy for me. I just don't. There like nothing really grabs. It's like grabs me. It just sounds like a pleasant commercial, or something that you hear on the Walmart, speakers.
it sounds maybe like the music they play when you're waiting on hold for the Royal Bank.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I guess Songs of Innocence tends to be quite low, just because it was forced on everyone that had an iTunes account, which is weird.
I personally think that's a great album.
Yeah,
I think it's very good. I was very, very surprised at that. I wanted to dislike it because they've been on a bad rant for a while now. But I remember it showed up and I loved it, and I still really like it actually. So I'm one of the few that thinks that one's actually pretty good.
Cool. Yeah, I don't. It's not like a dislike for any of those albums. Like it's just kind of. It just doesn't grab me. I can't say there's a U2 album that I dislike, that I actually don't like. If anything,
what you're saying is the U2 in the later 2000s, it just doesn't tickle your bollocks.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it's flat. It's like you don't hate it, you don't love it. It's very nice. It's serviceable. It's. It can be played in a commercial. It's not offensive, But hey, All That You Can't Leave Behind seems to be the album that kind of set that course, because that was a very successful record, and I think that was a comeback from pop, right? As far as commercial sales were. All That You Can't Leave Behind was definitely the commercial return of the band, where it was accepted and there was quite a few hits on it. So I think the band kind of they took their cue from that record. At least that's what I sense. I sense that they were trying.
No more drum machines.
No more drum machines. No more wild rock star Johnny Cash album closers.
Yeah.
No more Jimi Hendrix covers, I will say that, though. I don't like their All on the Watchtower. I think is a massive fail. On
me too. I agree.
Yeah, I was pretty. That's probably the one song I hate by U2. But
always skip it when I listen to that Rattle and Hum. Always skip that one. Not a huge Helter Skelter fan either, actually. If we're gonna be honest with each other.
No, fair enough. But yeah, but that album does have some great moments, though, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Jeff, that was a good one.
Excellent, Jimmy. I look forward to hearing what you're going to choose for us for next week.
Okay, or you choose one. I mean, we'll see which one's better.
Let's give it to midweek. Let's put our thinking caps on and come up with a good one.
Okay, fair enough.
I see you already have your thinking cap on, but I'll...
It's the hair tamer. Yeah.